Welcome to the Water Trough, where we can't make you drink, but we will make you think. My name is Ed Drozd, the Small Business Doctor, and I'm really excited you chose to join me here as we discuss topics that are important for small business folks just like you. If you're looking for ideas, inspiration, and possibility, you've come to the right place. Join us as we take steps to help you create the healthy business that you've always wanted. Good afternoon, folks. This is Ed Drozd, the Small Business Doctor, and I'm pleased today to be with my guest, Richard Reimer. Richard is an attorney who focuses on one thing only, protecting the brand rights of small and mid-sized businesses. He had worked as a trademark lawyer in big law for 18 years, but decided to become brand counsel and start his own firm focused on the needs of smaller businesses. Now, of course, for those of you here with me, this is the Small Business Doctor, so Richard is right down our alley. We question ourselves, why did he choose small business? Well, while working in big law, he came across dozens of small companies who would infringe the rights of his bigger clients. Yes, his clients were being infringed by us small business folks, okay? And he heard various versions of, but I didn't know, I didn't realize that was important. These are the sorts of things that Richard is here to help us with. Small businesses are underrepresented. They don't even know how to look for legal help when using their brands. Quite simplistically, a lot of us probably take it for granted. It's not a big deal because we're small, okay? When Richard's not protecting the brands of small companies, he enjoys spending time with his wife and his 4 daughters. He's a native of Cobb County, Georgia, where he lives now in Smyrna, and enjoys the vibrant and diverse community around him. By the way, he was inspired to become a lawyer after being coached by a lawyer on a youth soccer team. Never forgetting where he came from, he is an active coach to this day, having coached more than 30 of his daughters and hundreds of other local girls' soccer teams. Richard, welcome.
Thank you, Ed. Thanks for having me.
It's a delight to have you, sir. So let's jump right into this thing. What is a brand?
Well, Ed, that's a really good question because I think a lot of us use the word brand and a lot of us use the word brand differently. So understanding what I'm talking about, I think will help your listeners understand the vast majority of what we talk about during this podcast. When a marketing professional talks about a brand, they're really talking about some sort of commercial symbol that evokes an emotional response. So think of the story where you're driving down a highway and you see the golden arches in the distance and you're ready for a break. Half of the people in the car think, oh yes, I want some salty fries and I want to use the restroom. The other half think, hey, maybe the next exit will have something better. But that immediate emotional response that you get without even having to translate in your mind that is a McDonald's, that is branded. Lawyers really don't have that much soul. Lawyers just think about the connection between that symbol and the goods or services that it comes from, who is providing that particular good or service. So when I see the golden arches, I'm not going to think it's Burger King. I'm not going to think it's Hardee's or some other brand. I'm going to think it's McDonald's. If someone else begins using the golden arches, as a lawyer, I want to prevent that. So a brand is the thing that connects the company with the goods and services and allows the public to see in a very quick, efficient way who exactly is providing this service or this product.
So what I'm hearing you say then, our brand is our identity, if you will.
Very much. Just like your name is Ed. Why is your name Ed? Your parents chose it. Obviously, that's why it's Ed. But it could be just about anything. But when I say Ed, and specifically when I say Ed Drozd, I'm referring to you and you only.
Okay, gotcha. So we have these brands. We go to great lengths to put them out there so that we will be identified. People will know as we're driving down the highway that the golden arches signify McDonald's, and hopefully we'll attract people. But a lot of time is spent, and certainly in your sphere, on the matter of protecting a brand. What is it to protect a brand? And what are we exactly protecting anyway?
It's a great question, Ed. The thing we're connecting is confusion in the marketplace. I don't want my consumers going to you thinking that they're coming to me. It's really a consumer protection mechanism. It's one that's used by the companies. I would sue you in that situation if you were trying to confuse people to go to you using my branding. But it's the consumers that we're at the end of the day trying to protect. So if another company, going back to my McDonald's example, were to adopt the golden arches, I, as a consumer, might choose to go to that restaurant, especially on a long road trip, thinking that's where I get the salty fries, the bathroom that I want, it is the nation's bathroom, and all the other things I'm looking for. But going to see someone else, McDonald's is necessarily losing out. They're potentially losing out on sales. They're potentially having their brand tarnished. They're potentially having some sort of other blurring of understanding exactly what it is that McDonald's offers. I can't have anyone else using my brands because it'll confuse the marketplace and you lose out in so many ways. To protect your brand, in the United States at least, all it requires is using your brand to start gaining rights in it. So the second Ray Kroc, or maybe it was the McDonald's brothers, decided to put the golden arches in front of their restaurant, that was the moment they got protection. Now, they have by this point in time enhanced their rights from no longer just having this use-based protection. They have gone to having register rights so that the USPTO, that is the United States Patent and Trademark Office, has registered their brand, and anyone who wants to can go search and see exactly what is protected under that. Their brands go out even further in terms of what other similar symbols might be protected under it, what other types of services might be protected under it, how far geographically their expanse goes. Having the registration does even more. There are further steps I'll just briefly touch of policing and enforcing that even further protects their brands. So those steps, searching, registration, policing, enforcing, are the four things that really help someone protect their brands.
We protect the brand. I'd like to understand a little bit more about the implied protection. You say once they start using, they have initiated protection. Let me just be the devil's advocate here. I live in a small community in a Western state, and someone in a small community in an Eastern state has started to use something not protected legally. And I've done the same thing. Unbeknownst to me, they're out there doing that, but we're both doing it in the early phases, unaware of each other, don't have a clue that each other exists, and thereby have no malicious intent to undervalue or what have you the other. What about that?
I will answer your question, Ed, but let me start by saying the fact that both of these people, or either of these people, is using a brand without having done any research, any investigation as to whether or not it's available for use, is borderline malpractice. And I don't mean in a legal sense, but just as a business person. You should know whether or not every brand you adopt is available for you to be used the way you want to use it. Now, to return to your question, if you have two different people in different geographic zones, Eastern and Western United States in your example, and they're using identical brands in connection with identical goods or services, that's fine. Neither one has rights to say, hey, you're encroaching on my territory, because in fact, you're not encroaching on their territory. Now, there's a lot of assumptions that are made in night analysis, especially in the 21st century. We don't have to be within a 30-minute drive of a particular location for a brand to be impacting us. There are many brands that are nowhere near me. My wife the other day was talking about a line of clothing that she enjoys, and she had the perception it was a local brand. We did some quick research and found out it's from Washington, D.C. The brand very much impacts her, and it's not within 500 miles of me. So, how exactly is a brand being used? How far out do the rights of a brand holder go? And when you get to a point where you have this overlap, and there's really three things you're looking at in the overlap. Geography is very important. The brand element itself, the word, the design, the tagline, whatever it is, and the goods and services related to it. When you have all three of those intersecting, whoever got to that space first has the right. And the second comer is the infringer. Now, of course, the first person has to prove it out, and they probably find some way to negotiate and settle a matter like that. But if you were just to take it seriously.
I want to ask you a question going a little off track here, but I think it's germane. Many years ago, my wife and I were responsible for putting together a trade show in the blood banking industry. And ours was a Massachusetts version of this particular event. And we wanted to model it after the international one, which took place in San Francisco. And in our marketing campaign, we introduced the notion of our show, we said, "Missed San Francisco? We've got what you need." And we went on to describe the people that were going to be there. Basically, what we did is we rebuilt locally the same collection of high energy, high profile experts in the field and brought them all here. We modeled the same thing. And we ultimately got a cease and desist from the American Association of Blood Banks because they felt that we had infringed. And I'm curious because this is kind of like a soft space. All we had done was refer to the fact of something that was over. If you missed that event, we have something here that might be intriguing to you. Did we really break any law? Do you mind commenting on that? I think it's relevant because I think a lot of us small business people, I don't think we gather the dimension of this sort of thing. Is that in fact a violation, or is it just a perceived thing, which they're bigger than us, so therefore they could say, don't do that?
Well, Ed, I'd be lying if I said there isn't some David and Goliath out there. There's a lot of larger companies that will go after the smaller companies, just thinking they can clear the space and get more right than they in fact are owed. But at the heart of the issue you're raising is likelihood of confusion. That is the three words that you really need to think of when you're thinking about whether or not one person's use of a brand infringes upon someone else's. And it's a total facts and circumstances analysis. You can't just simply write down on a sheet of paper, Ed's using this particular branding in connection with blood bank promotion, and this other company is using this branding, and let's look at the paper. But the fact that you referred to them specifically, you didn't use them by name, but you definitely were calling out to them. You mentioned the San Francisco location, you're in the same space or some other things. My bet is if you looked strongly enough in their letter, they might be talking about things like the fact that you use color schemes or taglines or something else that was similar to theirs. Maybe your name even included some wording that they had as well in their naming. It's a total facts and circumstances situation. You're getting a little bit out of the traditional trademark zone at that land. You're getting out of the traditional goods and services analysis and branding analysis at that point and getting something that's a little bit, as you well said, squishy. But it is a sort of thing that I think at a minimum, their letter might have been less of a cease and desist, even though they might have used those words, and more of a notice of we have rights, we have national rights, our brand is owned nationally. I know we didn't come to your particular state or your region, but people in your state and region know about it. You allude to that in the fact that you refer to us in your letter. So we will want you to be aware of our rights and not encroach on our rights.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for allowing me to go off on that little tangent, but I do think it showcases the notion that for probably the vast majority of us, it is ambiguous, especially, and I think many of us would feel this way, when there is no nefarious intent whatsoever.
I think too, the thing that really is missing, one of the things I'd like all small business owners, especially listening to this, to understand is your intent is irrelevant. Whether or not you know about the other company is irrelevant. Whether or not you think you're getting extra business, that's irrelevant. Even if upon hearing about this other company, you think, I'd never want to be like them because they're really bad. They do whatever. Those things don't matter. I hear a lot of small business owners come to me and say, but I didn't know about this. And they'll often think that because their Secretary of State approved the organization name, the entity name they use, or because they have the domain name that matches with their company name, or because a marketing company came up with their name, or they independently created the name, One Night Playing Boggle, or whatever it is, that these sorts of things excuse the behavior or give you some out for infringement. That's not true. So no matter how you get to your name, you really need to have an analysis done to make sure that your name is able to be used the way you plan to use it. And it limits greatly your chance for having an infringement claim brought against you later, which could be a death knell for a small business.
Right. Gotcha. And I think that's interesting. We register a company name with the Secretary of State and make the assumption that implies there is some kind of oversight. There is no such oversight. Is that correct?
In fact, my newsletter this morning went out, and I believe you're on the list. went into the Secretary of State thing specifically, and my newsletter had 4 specific reasons of why the Secretary of State's approving of your name has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to use the name. Anyone who wants to be on my newsletter list, I love giving information like that out. Please reach out. We'll figure out how to make that happen. I think that there's so much confusion about what's happening within a business as you're going through the steps of operating a business, whether it's organizing at the very beginning or doing other things along the way. And people misconstrue something that's being done in the tax realm or in the operational realm for state government purposes with having anything to do with trademark or the ability to use brands. They're unrelated and they get blurred frequently.
Okay. You mentioned trademark. So trademark and branding are independent things. Is that what I just heard you say?
A brand is a word that a business owner or a marketer will use to describe the emotional response that they want from a commercial symbol. To a lawyer, a trademark is a commercial symbol that helps the public understand who is offering a good or service.
Okay. So they're really two independent things. They're not to be confused.
They are, one thing, Ed, as I left my large firm life for 17 years, had called myself a trademark lawyer. The first thing I did when I opened my new firm geared towards small and mid-sized businesses was change my name to brand counsel. The vast majority of my clients probably do not know if they have a trademark. And if they do know, they might not know that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's a confusing word to a lot of lawyers. And quite frankly, I don't need my clients to learn to speak my language. I can speak theirs.
I gotcha. Excellent. We understand, thanks to what you're telling us here, that we must not make any assumptions about that which we use to identify ourselves, our brand. We need to be aware of the fact that someone else who was there before us, who could demonstrably say they were there before us anyway, would have the right to cite us for infringement. And we know that nobody's policing the brands for us, whether it be a government entity or a state entity or what have you. So let's say that we just go ahead merrily on our way and we just do what we do. What happens? What may happen?
Well, we'll take it to the worst case scenario. First of all, going about your own merry way and doing that is what a lot of companies do with brands, period, even large companies. So I'm not pointing a finger at small and mid-sized businesses here. It happens very frequently that a company decides to adopt, let's say, a name for some service or product, and off they go. They don't do any searching. They do no legal filings. They do no policing, etc. But the reality is when you bump into someone else in the marketplace, and I consider it a collision of sorts, when one company sees another and thinks, wait a minute, that's mine. I looked at this for just a second and thought it was me. Or maybe a really good customer calls you up and says, I'm sorry I couldn't come to your booth in Vegas because I didn't have time. And you think to yourself, I wasn't at the trade show in Vegas this year. My best customer got confused and thought it was me. What is happening here? When you find that sort of collision, the winner of this battle, if you will, is the party that was there first. So I would recommend that the only time you merrily go along your way using a brand is if it's a brand that if someone told you you have to stop using it, you would think, sure, I don't care. I could easily call it Acme as well as Beta. It doesn't really matter to me.
So let's say the worst case could lead to fines, litigation, and so on and so forth, I presume, right?
And really quickly, infringement, 9 times out of 10, when you lose an infringement case, or even if you settle, the thing that happens is you have to change your name. You have to quit using that branding. The party that wins the suit or settles on the positive side could also ask for your profits that you made while using that brand. If they have a registered brand and it can be shown that you willfully infringe their brand, they can get 3 times your profits plus their lawyer's fees.
So in the worst case scenario, if it were to pan out for the one who identified your infringement, it's a pretty significant impact.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's quite frankly, Ed, from a perspective of a small or mid-sized business, the first thing alone, having to change your name, especially if it's an important name, for example, your company name, having to rebrand unexpectedly midstream and having to start over again, whatever traction you had gained is going to be lost with respect of your name, and having to restart from scratch. I myself have a business that turns 2 years old next month, so I understand the game of getting your name known in the marketplace. I could only imagine if on my second anniversary, someone said, you know what, you got to start with a brand new firm name. And all that goodwill that you've developed in the community, it's gone. That's a really big kick in the pants for a small or mid-sized business to take. And forget about me having to pay profits in that hypothetical I have. Forget about me paying 3 times profits or their lawyers' fees. You might as well take $1 billion from me. It's all the same. It's going to result in me not being able to practice as I wanted to practice and going a different direction entirely.
Yeah, that's profound. I think that in the simplicity of it all, pardon me, I don't mean simplicity of the larger picture. In the simplicity of the smaller picture through the eyes of the small business owner. And I'm thinking, when I say small business, I'm thinking like micro business, for example, solopreneurs such as myself. It really is difficult to imagine the impact that things like this could have. I don't think it's something at the top of mind.
Yeah.
What are you able to do to get the word out there about these things? You admit this is not well known and understood. I do believe you. It's vital. So how do you get the word out? I mean, there's a lot of naysayers out there who are going to go, whoopee-doo.
Well, education, education, education. I will freely admit that of 100 companies starting out who ignore the realities of brand protection, more than 90 will get through their early years without having any issues whatsoever. I freely admit that. And it might even be as high as 95 or 98. I'm not worried about the 90 or 95 or 98. I'm worried about the 2 or the 5 or the 10. And if my message were something along the lines of you have to pay a year's profits in order to afford this sort of thing, I would understand why people would say, I will take my chances. But the product that I offered is begin you towards the journey of protecting your brand and understanding what's going on costs $275. So there's a very small cost for a very large gain. Now, if you want to gamble and assume you're going to be in the 95 or so percent that will have no issues, I can't make you stop. But I want you to at least realize you're gambling. I think that the vast majority of small businesses aren't gambling because they want to gamble. They're gambling because they don't even know there's a risk. And getting on podcasts, getting in community groups. Heck, I've got a high school class I'm going to be talking to next week. It's an entrepreneurial class, and in 30 of these students in 5 or 10 years will be starting businesses in my community. I want them to know. I want them to tell their friends. I have newsletters. I post on LinkedIn constantly. I have videos. I try as many ways as possible to help people understand that there is a risk.
And I think that's a great idea. I surmise that you're going to perhaps have more success with those that are starting than those who are doggedly affixed in their place. Because the longer I go without an issue, the less inclined I am to believe I need to invest in this thing. This is a broad statement. I say I as in the broader I.
Sure.
And for the new folks, lucky them that they should have the information to even consider. This is something I never heard about when I started out. I was not unaware of the fact of brand infringement, but I never really thought of it in terms of being something meaningful to me. And I mean me. But I think that educating these young entrepreneurs as you are doing is a fantastic thing to give birth to people who are evolving, understanding the importance of this. And even more importantly, I imagine that over the course of time, especially as we become more and more successful in our business, we become a greater and greater target.
You're leading right to what I was going to say early on. So you segued yourself very well to the next topic, which is There are really two benefits to brand protection. Number one is preventing someone else from stopping you to use your brand early on when you are the party that is the potential infringer. And of course, the newer you are, since the winner is the one who's been there the longest, the newer your business is, the less likely you are the older person, you're likely the junior person. As time goes on, as you just said, you're more and more likely to be the older person. And also, as your goodwill grows, as your reputation grows, it's more likely that someone will want to purposefully or maybe even unintentionally, they just kind of know this works and they can't tell why, that, hey, Burger King would be a good name for a hamburger restaurant. Maybe I've never seen a Burger King, but somehow I think that would work. They don't even realize that someone's out there doing that already. So brand protection serves both. I tell people the litmus test for whether or not you should talk to me is if either of these two things concern you. Number one, if someone came to you tomorrow and told you you could no longer use a specific brand name, your company name, product name, service name, whatever, would that bother you? Number two is if the competitor of yours opened a store down the street or across town tomorrow with a very similar name, would that bother you? If either of those two things concern you, then you probably need to talk to someone like me. By the way, if you're a franchisee, you're taken care of. Your franchisor has done this. So franchisees, maybe you can learn something and share this with your friends, but you don't need to worry about contacting me. If your business is riding hot dogs on the side of a cart and going to a park and selling hot dogs, you don't need to worry about me because you're not really using a brand. You're just getting information out there. Same with the balloon guy or something like that. The people that I'm trying to reach are those who are trying to create a unique name, a unique company, and have the public recognize them for this unique name, that this unique idea and concept, and don't want others to use confusingly similar names that might draw the potential clients to the wrong party. That's the people I want to reach.
I gotcha. I have to say, this whole thing to me is incredibly inspiring and it's really quite exciting. Our time is nearing to an end, but I don't have any desire to shut you off as I'm very interested in what you've got to say. So I'm going to open the door to you for things you'd like to leave us with or things you want to expound upon.
Well, one thing, Ed, I'd really love to share with people is the importance of being distinct. I think in the 21st century, the public has allowed people to be distinct and unique in many ways, and I applaud that. And I'm not talking about that at this moment. I'm talking about the ability to form a company that no one else is going to confuse with someone else. The number of times someone comes to me with a coaching service, and they want to call it USA Coaches or something that is just so descriptive or generic and not unique whatsoever. It's disheartening. They're not going to be able to gain a lot of rights from a branding perspective. And I mean that in a marketing way. You're not going to stand out from your competitors. And B, I'm not going to be able to help you in 5 or 10 years when someone's using a similar name and you want to make them stop. Don't use something descriptive. Don't use something generic. Use something that stands out. A lot of people want to use a name like USA Coaches because they'll think or rationalize that it's really easy for my customers to know what I do. And yes, it is easier. So you might save yourself a little bit of heartache in the short run at the beginning, but you're leading yourself to a whole lot of heartache in the long run. So be unique, be distinctive. I cannot push that strongly enough. And the more unique you are, the stronger your rights are, both from a branding perspective, I mean marketing when I say that, and from a legal perspective.
Excellent. Anything else you have for us?
No, Ed, I think that's it. I really appreciate you for giving me a lot of time and giving me a lot of leeway on answering your questions. It's been very enjoyable having you lead me through a lot of things that people are thinking. And I hope that we were able to let at least one more small business owner realize that there is some risk associated with using their brand. And they'll think about contacting, if not me, someone in their community, to be able to see what's going on with this and minimize their risk and hopefully avoid some sort of disaster.
I certainly think that you will reach people, and I think it will be eye-opening at the very least. Needless to say, small business people are not heavily and well funded. So the notion that it's something that can be invested in realistically to offset the potential for something devastating is well worth its while. Before we go, do you have anything you'd like to share with us, things that you're offering at the moment? And we can also put that in the postscript, which is perfectly fine. Is there anything you want to say, or should we just follow up with that in written form?
I do think that I'd like to one more time emphasize that getting a search done that will give you nearly everything you need to know about your risk tolerance and your opportunities to enhance your rights in your brand costs $275. This is step one of a four-step process. I don't mean to hide the ball from anyone, but step one is far better than doing nothing. Just understanding what's going on will give you so much more clarity as to where you're heading. And if you wish to engage in further steps, we're talking about thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars. So don't think about the person you heard who had to pay their divorce lawyer $20,000. That's not a price tag we're talking about. We're talking about a much lower price tag, and it is something that's affordable for nearly every size business.
And having gone through the first phase, do you offer people guidance as to the applicability and utility of those other phases without going into the nitty-gritty of them? Overview of what's going on. I presume you do that, correct?
Yes, and actually the report that I give you for the $275 is a 25-page report. It includes a lot of information about step two, registration or authentication.
Yes.
And I give you specific costs because like a mechanic, to be able to know how much it costs to fix your car, you have to look under the hood. That search is me looking under the hood. And so I can at that point give you prices. I also, leaving my big firm roots, have decided to not charge the way big firms charge. And no offense to that, it works well, but there are multiple steps in the process, and most firms charge large amounts at spiked periods of time. I look at the whole cost throughout the process and spread it evenly over the period of time so that you'll have a manageable and knowable payment along the way, rather than a spike of $2,000 in a given month unexpectedly.
Gotcha. Well, Richard Reimer, our brand counsel expert, I want to thank you once again for being with us today. This has been a fascinating conversation. I certainly have learned a lot, and I know that our listeners will do the same. So I want to thank you, and I hope perhaps we'll cross our paths again and expand upon this conversation further.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Take care now.
You too.